Today I'm making a quilt using only the most basic beginner quilt blocks. And I thought it may end up too simple, maybe even a little bit plain. But once I started playing with the layout and the colors, something unexpected happened. Everything came together in a way that completely surprised me. Let me show you. I went on a bit of a fabric hunt the other day and I struck gold. Look at these patterns and these colors. Around here, that's a rare treat. Designer fabrics are nearly impossible to get where I live, and most stores don't even ship to me, Amazon included. By the way, do you know of a good fabric shop in Europe? I'd love to know. First, we want to cut these beautiful fabrics and make a 16 patch. Let's go ahead and cut some strips. We want 2.5-inch strips out of each one. And I'm being very bold today because usually it takes me days, sometimes weeks to cut into new fabric, especially if I love it. I look at it, I touch it for days before doing that. So this is a definite improvement. Now, let's sew these into groups of 4 fabrics. We want contrast, so try to mix them up. When I'm done, I will have 2 kinds of 16-patch quilt blocks, some cool colors and some warm colors. I really wanted to do something that would make the fabrics pop, but I also wanted to try a brand new pattern with you. But don't worry, every element in this quilt is super easy, beginner level stuff. We're actually making 2 different quilt blocks in total. Now we are going to press these nice and flat before we continue, because our next step is to cut these big pieces into 2.5-inch strips. And by the time we're done, we will have 64 strips made out of 4 squares each. If I had only 4 fabrics to use for each quilt block, I would not have sewn them into 4 rows, only 2, because it would all be too repetitive. As is, because there's 2 different sets of 4, I am able to mix them up, which allows me to sew them into 4s. And because I'm a very wonky cutter, chances are I will need to check my cuts every now and then, just to make sure I'm cutting them as squares and not as diamonds or something. This extra step will help a lot when it's time to sew to get those corners sharp. And this is what we have. Time to mix it all up. We want to create squares made out of 16 mini squares that are diverse and filled with color, no 2 same fabrics touching. And as you can see, this is truly one of the easiest quilt blocks you can make. It doesn't really matter if it's a 4-patch, a 9-patch, or a 16-patch, they're all done pretty much the same way and with very little effort. And the block we'll be making after these is even easier to make. The point I'm trying to make here is, as long as the fabric allows it, you can create a stunning, one-of-a-kind quilt block without having to know too much about it or be very good at quilting. Simple quilt pattern will be more than enough to create something quickly, but most importantly, something that you will be proud of. These are looking pretty great, and I love how you can't really tell we're using just 2 fabric combinations to create these. You know, if you look at it closely, you can see it, but when you look at the whole thing, it just works. Regardless of it being the cool colors or the warm ones, these fabrics work so perfectly together. These are little bursts of color that will look perfect in our finished quilt top. to create our second quilt block, and for the life of me, I cannot remember what it's called, so I'm going to need your help with that. Also, combining these two blocks makes a specific quilt pattern. I've seen this before, but again, no clue what it's called, so if you do, please let me know. But anyway, I've clearly failed my math today because I made way too many square strips. I would say I made double the amount I needed for the size I have in mind. That's not a problem though, because I'll just adapt this quilt block design and make sure I can use at least some of the fabric I've cut. So instead of having a 4.5-inch square in just one fabric, I am ripping my strips in half and mixing those fabrics together to create a center for my quilt block. But I think this will look even better if I'm honest. I was just being really lazy. We're creating our squares by mixing the fabrics up just like before, except now I am mixing cool and warm colors because this will make our lives a lot easier when we're making the puzzle. We want cute and colorful and awesome, and I think that's what we're getting. And these are done, all 8 of them. As promised, a very simple, a very quick and easy pattern anyone can do, especially if you decide to use just one 4.5-inch square for the center as I intended. So now we want these to be the same size as the 14 patch. So let's go ahead and measure them so we can cut our white strips to size. Just don't forget about the seam allowance, okay? So, 2.5 strips of white fabric. We need to cut them quickly before we sew a frame all around our center squares. I like to use white, you already know that. I realized I only like to use any other color solids, like black or mustard yellow like I used a while back, when the pattern fabrics are soft or pastels. Because if the fabrics are colorful, I want white to give the eyes a rest. But you can do this in any color, of course. I just couldn't think of any other color that would make the colors pop as much as far as I'm concerned. Ah, so pretty. Time to puzzle. We are mixing these up to see what we get. In terms of color, you can do whatever you like. Keep cools to one side and warms to the other, or just mix the whole thing. If we hadn't made the center squares in mixed colors, we would struggle to decide how to mix them. But this is perfect. I'm thinking that doing one row of cool fabrics and another of warms is the best way to go. If we had a third option, we could have created some sort of, different pattern. But as is, this is looking pretty cool. Squares all together, so 4x4 blocks, nothing to it. The only thing we really need to watch out for is making sure we nest our seams when joining our rows. We want these blocks to have sharp connections, so we need those seams to match perfectly. And here we have it, our stunning quilt made out of some of the simplest quilt blocks ever. How cute is this? I am loving this very simple but striking look. Plus, how fun was it to make? I had a blast, I hope you did too, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye!